Well, good evening, everyone. I know it's been a while since we've been on, but between having colds and fevers and maybe identifying some other types of contagious germs that were going around, I, Pastor Z, have been out for a little while. And along with that, I didn't have my voice. It was very scratchy, not to mention some of the places where I felt like not only was it scratchy, but my throat had gotten to the point where whenever I swallowed, I actually felt like my throat was inflamed. So this evening, I am feeling somewhat better, getting ready to prepare myself, God willing, to go back to the location tomorrow and finish up with some things in the internship. But I just wanted to come on and spend a little time talking about some life lessons. There's so many things that we are now aware of as adults. And if we're not, hopefully we soon will be in the seeing, the understanding, and the enlightenment of why we were not made aware until this particular time. As adults, we have faced a lot of things. Some perhaps could have been prevented if we had had someone in the home, or even someone who was discipling us, or perhaps even an older adult, which could give us some guidance and some direction to help lead us. And I certainly can say, as people of faith, oftentimes, even as children, God is speaking to us. And God is certainly assisting and helping and directing. But yet, that parent or that person who is the caregiver still has a particular interest, hopefully, and takes it in that child, takes the interest of understanding how the nature and how the maturing of that child actually comes into play. How even sometimes if that child has been abandoned and you've left them for long periods of time with other people, that maybe the child does not even have the ability to self-soothe, or certainly, depending on the age group, developmentally, the brain hasn't matured into some of the places where there are benchmarks that would assist in letting you know the growth period and the growth spurs if the marks are being met. And so this evening, before I get ready to go on into another meeting, I wanted to just spend a little time and tell you how grateful we are that you are tuning in, and how hopeful we are that a lot of the messaging is going out more positive, and that it is really helping you to grow in areas where you're reflective and you're beginning in 2025 to really look at your life, see some places that may need the redefining, and certainly look at those places that have not been working at all, not even well, not even partially to the standard of realizing that not everyone is for you. You may be in a friendship group where there's not really much that you're receiving in terms of how you can grow in the places that were purposed to grow, or the plans that even God has had for you. And certainly in the places where, when you identify some of those areas where that person is only present in your life for whatever agenda or motive they may have had that really wasn't for your good. So, time out for that. And let's just talk about some of those things that we still, even as adults who may not have had the best childhoods, but we had someone who was there as a provider, and maybe they weren't much of a nurturer, or maybe sometimes they did leave and had to go on to other places and felt that it was best to let you stay where you were, whether it was with a grandparent or someone else that they had actually inquired of. And as long as you were being well treated, not malnutritioned, and not abused verbally, physically, or otherwise, even sometimes spiritually in the growth sector of our spirit, when we were thinking about the fellowship that we might have with one another. We have to consider these things because we forget that we are speaking into a child's life. We're speaking into that present person who maybe later on will take some of the things that were not so healthy, that did not help them to thrive into their adulthood, but before that, even into their teenagehood. And we know, we've heard that old saying, it's very difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. But what we do know is, even biblically, if we're not correctable, if we're not people who can take the wise counseling of recognizing that we don't have it all together, there may be a word prophetic that's from God, and He's sharing something with an individual who has had the doorway open to be able to speak to you. If you have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. I can often talk about times when I heard the Spirit speak to me as a teenager or even as a child about what I was thinking to do. And we know that we don't do things like that. Is basically the correction that came along with that voice. And sometimes it's a familiar voice. It could have been a reminder that sounded a lot like your mom. But now we have grown and hopefully matured a little more in our spiritual understanding and our spiritual walk and navigating through life with the Spirit leading, guiding, and directing us. And we know now that that voice was present because in Scripture, Jesus has made it very clear that His sheep know His voice and another they will not follow. So hopefully we do know the voice of our Lord, and we're not getting entangled or enmeshed into something that God had not purposed or wanted for us to be strangled or cut off in the weeds because of that circumstance, or maybe the dealing with a particular personality or behavior. So as I go a little further, I wanted to talk about, nowadays, even the older parents are dealing perhaps with the grandchildren differently, but the parents maybe were not as equipped to deal with their own children, the boys, the girls, that were in the family. And some of the ideas of how to involve yourself in that person's life may not have been so structured to the point where you had open communication, and some of the things that they were seeing perhaps and were aware of that was going on behind closed doors, they've actually come out with those types of influences instead of more positive influences. We also hear, raise up a child in the way that they should go, and when they get older, they will not depart from it. It doesn't mean that there might not be some places of stumble or struggle or places of not knowing how to navigate. And that's the part about not finding yourself alone, but finding yourself in relationship with people that do have godly influence in your best interests at heart. Even when it comes to telling you the truth and maybe you're not accepting it at the time, look again. There might be something, just a little something of truth or something that will help grow or mature. And because we get perhaps caught up in, I'm grown and I don't need someone to tell me what to do, we all need direction. And sometimes we all need correction. And if we are going off the highway and delaying something that is part of the walk, even look at the delay part as a possible success story, because even when you miss the mark, the beauty of it all is that when you are made aware, when you can reflect back on what it was, where it was, when it was spoken, whatever the case might be, there is the ability to turn around with Jesus and begin again and be restored back into righteous standing. And so when I'm talking about dealing with children, individuality, one size does not fit all. All children do not have the same makeup. We may have a biological marker that marks us in the DNA to know who our parents or ancestors are, but we are not all the same. And so in that case, you cannot raise every child in the same manner. There may be some particular generalities where you've received the same thing in portion size, where you weren't giving one more than the other. But when it comes to talking, when it comes to sharing and showing love, one person may be very sensitive and touching pretending that you love them, they may pick up on that and immediately call us on it. When we want everything we do to be genuine, to be truthful, to be honest, and certainly be a part of a direction that merits not only wisdom, but merits the purpose of why this is spoken, particularly for this child. For example, if a child found themselves not having social skills, how we approach that, practice role playing, talk therapy at home, or even sometimes going out and having that conversation with a person who's more neutral might be a little more effective than us trying to do it ourselves. Because, first of all, we have to acknowledge where even our own shortcomings may be, or where some of the places are that we're not quite equipped. And we don't see that happen too often. What we do see is the lack of patience or the inability. And when a person becomes frustrated, then they're ready just to quit and give up, and they don't return to it. There could be a time where, even in teaching something, yes, we all may need to take a break and have that breather for a moment, but don't just let it lie unresolved. Let's see if we can pick it back up. And we've maybe supported it with some other tools and skills, even other conversations with someone who may actually have done this before of what we're trying to teach or share with our child. And it's a difference between each growing stage, from the toddler to the teen, and from the teen to the young adult, and from the young adult to the adult. And certainly, prayerfully, we're not doing the same thing that we did when they were 3 years old, when they're 33 years old. So we want to make sure that what we're saying and doing is age appropriate, but it's also developmentally appropriate for that person. And again, individuality. All the kids, they may have the same father, same mom, and they are different in their personalities. Let those personalities be developed. Start early in the mentoring or the discipling, the mothering and the fathering, to see what the child even dreams about or encourages them to think about what they would like to do when they're older, whether it's a entrepreneur position, or maybe it's farming, or whatever it might be. Maybe, it could be something that doesn't require a lot of money, but it does require their time. And so, in all those things that even require our time, we were perhaps never taught to count the cost of what it would take to bring a project, or maybe even some type of platform or forum, to the people, or to a neighborhood, or even to a podcast, or possibly even in your own backyard where you started creating what you call the community garden. So we must begin to come outside of the box that we felt so comfortable and safe in for so long, and start considering other ways, strategies, be innovative, creative. And it's not wrong to try something. And if it doesn't work out, see if there's a way with a strategy to improve upon it. But don't start and stop. No procrastination in 2025. If we are to walk and walk well, to walk strong, to walk healthy, and even to spiritually walk, that we are not transgression against God and God's wiseness, or even against ourselves, and basically sabotaging what could be, because we get so caught up in what it's not right now. We are right back to that affirmation that's been a part of the beginning of the year. That's found in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18. So therefore, do not place all your focus in the seen, because what is seen is temporary, but put your focus on what is unseen, because what is unseen is eternal. Hopefully you're racing for something that could last for far past, for greater time than just this natural life. If I'm talking about it from every position, I can see the spiritualness in it, the spiritualness of leaving a legacy, having a motto or a covenant agreement with those who are a part of your inner circle. Those three good friends like Jesus had that you can rely on and you can trust and that will always go with you and be there for you. Because sometimes, even in your own family, you may actually deal with the disappointment of feeling like you were shot down. But nevertheless, if God be for you, who can be against you? And if He gave you this vision or He gave you a word, the encouragement is there. And I pray that you will continue on in it. So, again, let's acknowledge there are hurts, there's words, there's physical conditions, there are places where sometimes those who have had children were not able to understand how to care for the child. But there is no reason why in these communities where we have so many different programs that we cannot go through the vetting process and find a home that truly does want to take a child if that child does not have a home and is not going to abuse that child and do things to that child to make that child more abandoned or deserted or feeling less love than what they were when they first came in. So the intent is to recognize if you are an adult yourself and you're trying to adult with other adults or you're adulting with a child, raising that child, be confident in letting them know the truth about your experience. Don't be a parent that's downplaying some of the things that that young person or that teenager or that older adult might need to know that they did not receive at home. These are the perfect times to be able to be in conversation and share some of the choices, decisions, or the thoughts that you've even had. Something that could have even been a suggestion, and you decided to take it on without any information. And what that suggestion turned into, what was the outcome, or even the consequences. But transparency that's not in the home will not be in the structure of other places that your child will be equipped, or your teen or your young adult will be able to stand and be able to understand how to move and breathe and have their being. In the Spirit moves like that with us. And God teaches us all things. So, as a parent who's been given the placement over a particular child or even over being faithful to a few things, that is the place where the structures and everything else that have been described, or even some of those inventive or creative different types of ideas that God will place in our spirit, can be scratched and choose wisely. We don't want to fall into the entrapments of becoming something that we were not created to be. We want to make sure that our children understand, even when we're training them up, that love and joy and peace, and even with the rest of the fruits of the Spirit, that faithfulness, that self control. Sometimes you'll go through long suffering. And I know I've spoken them out of order, but I want to make the point, and that is they may go astray. They may actually even become children who are adults that are considered prodigals. But it doesn't mean that our job stops or gets cut off or not done at all when they are still in our household. And sometimes they may have to go out into the world and find some things out. And I hope that even if it's a bump or a bruise, it's not to the place where it costs them their life or it changes what God had planned for them. So this evening, thank you for watching. Tune in. And as this month continues to go forward, we want to start having guests on our podcast and talk about real life things. God bless. Until next time.